There is a retired couple in Victor Harbor, South Australia, a town most Australians outside of Adelaide have never seriously considered, who own a cottage 2 blocks from the sea. Their combined income is $1,777 a fortnight. That is it, the full age pension. No super left to draw on, no investment property quietly funding Friday dinners. Just the Centrelink payment, the ocean breeze, and a mortgage-free home they bought before the rest of Australia started paying attention. And they are not scraping by. They are not eating toast for dinner 3 nights a week. They are comfortable. Actually, genuinely comfortable. And Victor Harbor is not even the most surprising town on this list. Here is the problem with how most Australians think about retirement. They assume it requires Sydney or Melbourne prices to be solved. They assume you need a fat super balance, a rental income stream, or at least one lucky property decision made decades ago. And so when the numbers don't stack up, they panic or they settle. But across this country, there are towns where $1,777 a fortnight as a couple covers your rent or mortgage, your food, your health, your weekends, and a little left over. Towns that never made the glossy retirement brochure. Towns that the property investors in Brisbane are not talking about yet. We are counting down 12 of them today, and things are going to get considerably more interesting as we go. If content like this is useful to you, real towns, real pension numbers, no fluff, hit subscribe right now and drop a comment below. Where are you watching from today? Whether you are already collecting the pension, 20 years out, or somewhere in between, I want to know where in Australia or the world you are sitting right now. Number 12. Armidale, New South Wales. Armidale sits in the northern tablelands of New South Wales at about 1,000 metres above sea level, which gives it something almost no other regional town in Australia can offer: 4 genuine seasons. The winters are cold and crisp, the summers are mild. In January, when coastal Queensland is suffocating and coastal New South Wales is packed with tourists, Armidale is 24 degrees and quiet. Average home prices here sit around $420,000 as of 2025. The University of New England is based here, which means the town punches well above its weight for cultural events, public talks, theatre, and the kind of active intellectual community that retirees who did not want to stop learning find genuinely valuable. There is a regional hospital. There is a GP network. There are parks, heritage buildings, and a farmer's market that has been running longer than most of the people who visit it. For a single pensioner on $1,178 a fortnight, Armidale is tight, but workable, especially if the home is owned outright. For a retired couple on the combined $1,777, it is comfortable. Plus, the trade-off is the drive. Sydney is 5 hours away, and the roads are not particularly forgiving. But retirees who made the move here consistently report the same thing. They did not expect to love it as much as they do. Number 11. Maryborough, Victoria. Maryborough sits in central Victoria, about 2 hours from Melbourne, in a part of the country that gold rush wealth built and then quietly forgot. The wide streets, the extraordinary heritage architecture, the town hall that Mark Twain once reportedly called a railway station with a town attached, all of it is still there, preserved in a way that bigger Victorian towns have long since lost. Average home prices in Maryborough are among the lowest in Victoria, regularly coming in around $280,000 to $320,000. Rental costs are proportionally low. The Maryborough District Health Service runs a full-range regional hospital, including acute care, oncology, and residential aged care under one roof, which for retirement planning purposes is not a small detail. Healthcare accessibility is the factor that turns a nice-sounding retirement destination into a realistic one, and Maryborough has it. Here is the thing about Maryborough. It is the kind of town where your neighbour knows your name within a week, where the community calendar is actually full, but where a couple on the full-age pension can rent a comfortable two-bedroom home for under $1,200 a fortnight and still have money left for groceries, utilities, and a decent meal out on the weekend. It is not glamorous. It is something better than glamorous. It is functional, warm, and genuinely overlooked. Number 10. Wallaroo, South Australia. Wallaroo sits on the Yorke Peninsula in South Australia, a triangular slab of land that points south into the Spencer Gulf like a finger, at about 2 hours northwest of Adelaide. Most Australians know the Yorke Peninsula as a holiday destination. Almost none have considered it for retirement. That is the opportunity, because Wallaroo offers something increasingly rare: genuine coastal living at an inland price. Median home values sit around $340,000. The harbour is right there. The beaches are real and the water is clear. The Wallaroo Hospital and Health Service provides emergency and surgical care on site. And the South Australian Government provides some of the most generous concession cards for low-income seniors in the country, covering rates, energy, and vehicle registration in ways that meaningfully extend how far the pension stretches. The influx of retirees over the last decade has shaped Wallaroo in ways that actually benefit retirees. More services tailored to older residents, more community programming, more age-appropriate housing options. The town is not undiscovered. But it is undervalued, and the gap between what it costs and what it delivers is still very much there for anyone paying attention. Number 9. Esperance, Western Australia. If you have seen photographs of Esperance and assumed they were doctored, they were not. The beaches here, Lucky Bay, Twilight Beach, Cape Le Grand, consistently rank among the cleanest and most visually stunning in the world. The sand is white in a way that seems industrial. Then the water is the kind of turquoise that travel photographers build careers around. Esperance sits in the south of Western Australia, about 8 hours from Perth by road. The remoteness is real, and it matters. If you need specialist medical care beyond what the Esperance Hospital provides, you are getting on a plane or driving a very long way. That is the honest version of this entry, and it should not be dismissed. But for retirees who have made peace with that trade-off, and there are many who have, Esperance delivers a quality of daily life that is almost impossible to find anywhere else in the country at this price point. Median home values around $380,000. A local airport connecting to Perth. An average resident age that skews notably older than the national figure, meaning the community infrastructure bends toward the needs of retirees in a way that younger, faster-growing towns simply do not. And those beaches, every single morning. Number 8. Echuca, Victoria. Echuca sits on the Murray River at the point where Victoria and New South Wales shake hands across the water, about 2.5 hours north of Melbourne. The Murray here is wide and slow and remarkable in the way that Australia's great inland rivers always are. Powerful and ancient and indifferent to everything happening around them. Median home prices in Echuca sit around $490,000, and which puts it on the higher end of this list. But here is where it gets interesting. Echuca's rental market is more accessible than its purchase market, and the cost of daily living, groceries, services, entertainment, tracks noticeably below Melbourne, even though Melbourne is close enough for a day trip when you need it. The Echuca Regional Health Service runs a 24-hour emergency department with full bulk billing for Medicare card holders, which matters. And the retired community here is not a recent development. It has been building for decades, and it shows. There are social clubs, river cruises, fishing groups, community gardens, and a heritage port precinct that gives the town a living identity, rather than the feeling of a place waiting for something to happen. For couples on the pension who want proximity to Melbourne without Melbourne prices, Echuca is the answer most retirement advisors are not giving them. Number 7. Charters Towers, Shrew, Queensland. Here is where things get genuinely unexpected. Charters Towers sits about 130 kilometres inland from Townsville in North Queensland, and it was once one of the richest towns in Australia. At the peak of its gold rush in the 1890s, it had more millionaires per capita than anywhere else on the continent. It had a stock exchange, 27 hotels, and an opera house. Then the gold ran out. What remains is one of the most intact collections of Victorian-era architecture in Queensland, and a hospital, a community that takes obvious pride in what it has preserved, and median home prices that sit stubbornly around $220,000 to $260,000. That is not a typo. For a retired couple collecting the full-age pension, $1,777 a fortnight combined, Charters Towers is one of the few places in this country where that income represents genuine comfort rather than survival. The climate is North Queensland warm and dry. The pace is slow. As the connection to Townsville via the Flinders Highway means specialist healthcare is accessible without living in the city. And there is something almost poetic about retiring in a town that was once Australia's second city and has spent 100 years becoming beautifully, affordably quiet. If you are still watching, and this list is getting better, now is the perfect time to subscribe. We cover housing, retirement, and the real numbers behind where Australians are choosing to live. Hit subscribe so you do not miss what comes next. Number 6. Huon Valley, Tasmania. Tasmania gets mentioned in retirement conversations more often than it used to. What does not get mentioned enough is the Huon Valley, the stretch of land south of Hobart along the Huon River, winding through apple orchards, salmon farms, and rainforest that smells like something from before the Industrial Revolution. And median home prices in the Huon Valley region sit around $450,000 to $500,000 depending on the specific town, Hornville, Geeveston, Dover. But the cost of living below the purchase price is notably low. Tasmania's electricity grid runs significantly on renewables, which keeps power bills lower than mainland averages. The GPs bulk bill at high rates, and Hobart is 30 to 40 minutes away, which means the Royal Hobart Hospital's specialist network is never far. Yes, here is what the Huon Valley offers that no number fully captures. Quiet, of a specific and rare quality, not the quiet of a place that died and left silence behind. The quiet of a place that is fully alive and simply uninterested in noise. The produce from this valley, the cherries, the salmon, the apple cider, is exceptional. The community of people who have moved here intentionally is thoughtful and engaged. On for a pensioner couple who wants Tasmania's famous natural beauty without paying Hobart property prices, the valley is the answer, sitting just down the road. Number 5. Bathurst, New South Wales. Bathurst is one of the oldest inland cities in Australia, and it has spent most of its existence being quietly remarkable, while the rest of the country looked the other way. It sits about 200 kilometres west of Sydney in the Central Tablelands, and at an elevation that keeps the summers honest and the winters genuinely cold. Median home prices in Bathurst as of 2025 sit around $429,000. Charles Sturt University is here, which does for Bathurst what the University of New England does for Armidale. It keeps the cultural calendar active, keeps the coffee decent, and keeps the town feeling younger than its demographics might otherwise suggest. Bathurst Base Hospital is a major regional facility. Public transport connections are real. Yet the Mount Panorama motor racing circuit brings a particular kind of energy to the town twice a year that retirees either love or have learned to work around. The argument for Bathurst as a retirement destination is straightforward. It is close enough to Sydney that family visits happen. Far enough that Sydney prices never arrived. Large enough to have everything you actually need, and small enough that you are not anonymous. That combination is rarer than it sounds. And on a combined pension of $1,777 a fortnight, a retired couple with a paid-off home in Bathurst is not struggling. They are living. Number 4. Geraldton, Western Australia. Geraldton sits on the Western Australian coast about 420 kilometres north of Perth, in the Mid-West region where the land is flat and rust-red and the Indian Ocean arrives without warning. The town has around 40,000 people, and which makes it large enough to have real medical infrastructure, including a major regional hospital, but small enough that the pace never tips over into the anonymous busyness of a city. Average home prices in Geraldton sit around $380,000 to $420,000. Western Australia generally has a lower cost of living than the East Coast, and within WA, Geraldton's groceries, services and utilities run lower still. But the beaches here, Glenfield Beach particularly, are genuinely beautiful and genuinely uncrowded. The famous 147-year-old Point Moore Lighthouse stands at the edge of town as a kind of permanent landmark, the kind of thing you walk past on a Tuesday morning and briefly remember that you live somewhere genuinely interesting. For retirees with ties to WA who cannot afford Perth, or for anyone willing to make a sea change on the West Coast, Geraldton makes a compelling case. The fly-in fly-out culture of the mining industry means the town has better than expected infrastructure for its size, and the sunsets over the Indian Ocean are, without exaggeration, among the finest in Australia. Number 3. Katherine, Northern Territory. Katherine will be the most surprising entry on this list for many viewers. The Northern Territory is not where most Australians imagine retiring, and yet, hear this out. Median home prices in Katherine sit around $250,000. And in the context of this list, that figure is extraordinary. The Katherine District Hospital provides comprehensive services. The town is the gateway to Nitmiluk National Park, home to some of the most dramatic gorge country in the Southern Hemisphere. 13 gorges carved through ancient sandstone by the Katherine River, accessible by canoe, by foot, by guided boat. The sunsets are extreme. The dry season, running roughly April to October, delivers weather that is warm and dry and almost perfect in a way that residents describe with the kind of conviction that makes outsiders suspicious until they experience it themselves. The trade-off is the wet season. June humidity giving way to the build is one thing. The actual wet season monsoon is another. And for retirees who spend the wet months somewhere else, and many do, Katherine becomes a genuinely remarkable base for the dry season months when the gorges are accessible and the temperature is right. It is unconventional. But the $250,000 median price and the extraordinary landscape earn it a place on this list that the conventional wisdom has never thought to give it. Number 2. Yankalilla, South Australia. Yankalilla sits about 70 kilometres south of Adelaide on the Fleurieu Peninsula, and in a pocket of South Australia that has a Mediterranean climate, rolling green hills, vineyards, and a coastline that arrives suddenly and dramatically at the end of country roads. It is a small agricultural town of just over 1,000 people. It is not the place for retirees who want a full social calendar handed to them. The McLaren Vale wine region is close. The Selix Beach coastline is close. Adelaide is close enough for a day trip, and far enough that you never feel like you are living in its orbit. Home prices in the broader Yankalilla district have risen, but remain more accessible than Fleurieu Peninsula hotspots like Victor Harbour or Goolwa. The key to Yankalilla is what it is near rather than what it is. For a retired couple who have owned their home outright, who want Mediterranean weather, vineyards in eyeshot, the ocean around the corner, and in the quiet that a town of 1,000 people delivers without drama. Yankalilla is a retirement answer that almost no one is giving. Number 1. Victor Harbour, South Australia. Back to where we started. And back to that couple. Victor Harbour sits on the Fleurieu Peninsula, about 80 kilometres south of Adelaide, where the Southern Ocean comes in hard against a coastline of granite and she-oak. The town has around 15,000 people, large enough to have a hospital, large enough to have a supermarket, and a cinema, and a decent cafe, and a men's shed, and a community choir, and everything else a retired life actually requires. Small enough that it still feels like a place where people know each other. Here is what makes Victor Harbour number one. The combination is almost unfair. Median home prices around $540,000, high by this list's standards, but the reason it leads is not the purchase price. It is everything else. Victor Harbour's rental market is accessible, and its cost of living is genuinely low. South Australia's concession card system for pension recipients covers council rates, energy bills, water charges, and motor vehicle registration. Extras that, taken together, can add up to thousands of dollars a year in real savings. The Victor Harbour Hospital, the proximity to Adelaide's specialist network, the Southern Ocean. The Granite Island Causeway, with the horse-drawn tram that has been running since 1894 and somehow still does. Victor Harbour had long been known as a retirement town in South Australia. What is less known outside the state is just how precisely its economics align with what the age pension actually provides. A retired couple on $1,777 a fortnight, owning their home, taking full advantage of the state's senior concessions, can live here with dignity and comfort, and the sound of the Southern Ocean, and morning walks along the esplanade and whale watching from the shore in winter. The people who moved here a decade ago knew something. The couple walking down that quiet main street in the thumbnail knew something. And now, so do you. 3 in 5 Australians aged 40 and over, according to AMP research from 2025, are worried they will not be able to afford the retirement they want. That statistic is real and it is heavy. But what it does not capture is that the retirement most people want, peace, community, access to nature, a time with people who matter, does not actually require the retirement most people fear they cannot afford. It requires the right postcode. These 12 towns did not make it onto the glossy brochures. They did not appear in the property investment newsletters. They just quietly exist, doing the work of being genuinely livable for people willing to look past the places everyone else is already looking at. Which one surprised you most? Drop it in the comments. Also, if you are already living in one of these towns, tell me what I got right and what I missed. I read every single comment. And if you have not subscribed yet, do it now. There are more towns, more real numbers, and more of these conversations coming. You do not want to miss the next one.